Zine Part 2. What we're going to look at here is placing some text and some text wrapping. So first off, if we can go to our window, go to our workspace, make sure we are on typography, then Windows, workspace, and make sure we reset that. If any windows pop up, collapse them as normal. File, open. We want the Zine ACA 2 this time, and we'll open it. Now we got it open. What we're going to do is on page 6 and 7 add some text that flows between these frames. But before we do that, we're going to go to our layers palette and make sure we are on the text layer. Because remember, we talked about layers in the last video. We place all our text on the text layer. This is a personal preference, not a must. It's a good idea to do it though. Next up, we go File, Place. Now you may be in your Zine folder, or you may not, but we're looking inside the links folder and we want to place the helmet hair doc. If replace selected item is turned on, do turn it off. It makes your life much easier. And do open. Now the loaded text icon appears. Now to place text, we simply draw a frame where we want the text to appear, and the text will appear within that frame. Of course we can draw them using the guidelines, so they can appear at frame or column at a time. Then we click the outports and draw the next one, and so on and so on and so on until we put everything in. I'm going to Control Z that and get back to my loaded text icon. This time I'm going to hold the Shift key down. You should notice the cursor has changed slightly. Now I'm going to click here, and you'll notice it automatically draws a frame using the guidelines as an indicator, follows it all the way down to the bottom, and then jumps to the next column and does the same thing, and then jumps to the next column and the next one until it's finished placing all of the text. Obviously this is not what we want. We could just simply select this one, resize, and well, that would be good enough. But there is another way of doing it as well. So when we're at the loaded text icon stage, if we hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, we can simply click where we want the frames to begin, and the computer figures out the rest for us. And once we're happy, we'll leave it at that. There is more text available, but we're not going to use it. This is just a demo file, obviously. So I'm just going to press Escape at this point to unload that. And there we have our text placed. Now I'm not happy with how the text looks. I'd like it to be justified and changed a bit. So what I'm going to do is select the entire story. To do so, if we double click, remember, in a frame, let me try that again, double click, it selects a word. Triple click, it selects a line. 4 clicks, 1, 2, 3, 4, it will select a paragraph. Let me do it again on this one because it's more obvious. 1, 2, 3, 4. If we do it 5 times, say for example 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it selects the entire story. Now another way to select an entire story is simply go to Edit, Select All. If you do want to select an entire story, make sure you're on the right tool. If you click just the frame and go to Edit, Select All, it selects every single frame because that's what it's thinking you want. So every single frame. You don't want that to happen. So make sure you're using the correct tool. So with the cursor in the type, go to Edit, Select All, and that will select all the text. Next I'm going to go to my paragraph styles. We've already got a style here called Main, so we're going to use that and click on Main. But one of the problems is I don't like the way the justification works on here. I want this to be properly justified. I don't want hyphenation appearing or anything like that where the words are being hyphenated. So what we're going to do is double click on Main, and you can see here's the style name and here's the current settings of it. So what we're going to do is look through all of these options until we find what we want. So first off, I said we want justification changed. So naturally you would think we'd click on justification, and this looks really weird already. Make sure we got preview turned on so we can see what's going to happen. And we can do a line left, nothing's happening, center line, no. So we'll just put it back to what it was. It's obviously not justification that we're changing. Indent and spacing, have a look. There is our alignment. So don't get these two mixed up, it's quite common. And what we actually want is just left justify. There we go. The other thing I said was hyphenation. If you want to turn off hyphenation, this one is much simpler. We just go to hyphenation and turn it off. And I'm happy with that, how that looks, and then I'm just going to do OK. But remember, all these settings, you have a quick click through a few of them, see what they do, and then click OK. Next up, we're going to look at text wrap. Now I'm going to go back into my layers palette, and I'm going to lock my text layer, simply because I don't want to be accidentally moving the stuff around. So if I go into my selection tool, I can't accidentally move my text around anymore. So I'm going to select the picture of the girl here, and you can see the text obviously is flowing all across her face, which is not what we want to happen. We want the text to flow around. So we're going to open something called the text wrap palette. We've got a number of options here. The default option is no text wrap. The next option is wrap around object. So that will wrap around the object or the bounding box, which in this indication is the red line, it's the frame, regardless of what size the actual picture is. So I've just clicked on the picture, so you can see the blue line is the actual size of the picture, but it's been cropped by the frame itself. Now I'm going to jump this one because this is what we are really going to look at, but let's show you what these ones do. Jump object. So it hits the object, jumps to the next available space. So like a top and bottom, like bottom as you would in Word. This is a lovely one. If you select preview, you can see how it looks. It is a really nice one to use, very simple. It doesn't require any complicated settings. But that's not what we want today. Last one, jump to next column. Oops, let's make sure you select it before you do it. Jump to next column. So if I move this into here, you can see the text hits it and then stops. Doesn't go below it, just jumps to the next column. Tell the truth, never use it. So what I'm going to do is put our lady back down the bottom, and I'm going to select the third one in wrap around object shape. By default, it's going to wrap around the bounding box. So exactly the same as this one. So we've got to tell it that's not what we want. We want something else. So what I'm going to do is down here when it says wrap to, we're going to change where or how it wraps. So you've got the right side, left side, right both side, largest area, etc. So you have different ways it can wrap. Just experiment, for example, but we want this both on both right and left sides. Next up is the contour options, i.e. how is it going to wrap around the shape. By default the shape is the frame, but we're going to tell it to do something else. Now I'm going to tell it to detect the edges for me, and it almost works. It works down here, it works down there, but where the helmet's very similar to the background colour, it can't detect the edges, so it's gone into that. Otherwise, this is a very good, powerful selection tool. Now this picture is actually a Photoshop document, so if I show you it in Photoshop, you can see it's got an alpha channel, or transparency, shall we say. So what we can do in InDesign is say, use the alpha channel, or the transparent. Say if it was a PNG with a transparent background, the same thing would work. And there we go, it flows around the alpha channel. What we can do then is adjust or change the inset spacing to move it slightly off, and as you can see this red line starts to appear. It's pushing the text away from the image, so you don't want it too close to the image because it makes it quite hard to see the image and the text at the same time. So I'm just switching in and out of preview mode so you can see what it looks like. Now say even you had made this image and it had a white background or a different color background even, but you wanted to still do this detect edges, but as we know the detect edges didn't work very well. there is another way to do it. We can simply select the image or the frame, go to Object, go to Clipping Path, go to Options. Now make sure Preview's turned on, then go to Detect Edges. And you can see it's trying to detect the edges for us. So we can see there's a big gap here, there's a big gap there, and it's going into this bit for some bizarre reason. So let's change the threshold up, see what happens. So the higher you put the threshold, the more of the image it's deselecting or going into. So let's try lowering the threshold. You can see the line is almost completing, but we're still inside, so it's going here and flowing in. So we can adjust again and again until we get roughly what we want. The tolerance, you adjust, changes how many of these dotted lines they put in and how much of the selection is involved. So I'm going to leave, I know it works quite well at a tolerance of 8. Sorry, a threshold of 8 and a tolerance of 1.5. But this leaves these little dots here. So what I'm going to do is do OK, and with the clipping path still in view, I'm going to go to the pen tool and have this delete anchor points. And I'm just going to click on those anchor points until they're gone, basically, and remove them. And there we have a nice, very clean edge detection. So we can go back into our text wrap, so that we can then select same as clipping, and there we go. Works the same way. So that's a few different ways of doing text wrap, and the thing is to experiment. If you're after text wrapping around a shape, you may have to do one of the many different ways of doing it, but it is possible. And it can be done manually as well, which we'll look at later.